Hello, welcome back to another Saturday with Coriander Quilts. I'm so excited to have all of you here today. We've got good viewer questions, viewer comments. I'm going to be sharing Elani's finished quilt so you can see the quilting on that. And I've got a special guest stopping in. Any guesses on who that might be? You'll have to stick around to find out. First off, let's kick this video off with a great viewer question. This was one that I got a few months ago and just haven't taken the time to answer. So today is the day. It comes to us from MW54470, and she asks, why do they call them economy blocks? It looks like a square and a square block to me. So let's talk about that. This question came in when I was talking about the economy block paper from Fat Quarter Shop. This is a paper piecing option for making these economy blocks, or as some of you might know them, square and a square blocks. Really, the two names can be interchangeable. And I pulled my encyclopedia of pieced quilt patterns. This is such a wonderful resource. So I pulled it because I wanted to talk a little bit about names of quilt blocks. We are delving a little bit into the history of naming quilt blocks. I think it's fascinating. Some of you will find it interesting, and some of you might be thinking, a history lesson during a quilting video, but I think it's really neat. So I'm going to open up first to the introduction to this book. This is Encyclopedia of Pieced Quilt Patterns, compiled by Barbara Brackman. And it is a wonderful resource for if you're looking up, you wonder, oh, I've seen this quilt block and I wonder what the name of it is so I can try to track down a pattern. Or if you are interested in designing quilt patterns, you know, there's a wealth of blocks that you can mix and match. There are no instructions in this book for how to make quilt blocks. Rather, it's just a picture reference of quilt blocks over the decades. So I want to read to you the beginning of this book because I think it kind of sums up naming quilt patterns very well. If Adam's task was naming the animals, it may have been Eve's to name quilt patterns. The Encyclopedia of Pieced Quilt Patterns grew out of my belief that every quilt pattern had a name, if only I could find it. I'm not the only quilt lover who developed a file to keep track of the names of all the quilt patterns I intended to stitch. Today, 50 years after I began sketching blocks on paper index cards, I find myself agreeing with Florence Peto's comment. It is not wise to be didactic about the nomenclature of quilt patterns. I now caution readers that the facts about pattern names are very elusive. Not every pattern has a name. There is no correct name for any design, and some of the names we take for granted as authentic 19th century folklore actually have relatively short histories. Names so familiar to us, standards like Mariner's Compass, Flower Garden, and Lone Star, seem to have been unknown to 19th century quilters. Following Peto's advice, I don't present this index as the authority on pattern names, which, like all vocabulary, change over time. The right name for a pattern is what you call it. Yet this encyclopedia has been the most complete index to published names for American quilt design since I first photocopied it to share in 1979. I think that sums things up well. Many quilt blocks have more than one name, and it changes over time what it's commonly known as. So the names of what we are very familiar with for quilt blocks currently might be quite different than what it was years ago. So I pulled up the page that shows these economy blocks, or square and a square blocks, so that I could show you a little bit here how this looks. Now you can see we have a couple different versions of this quilt block, depending on number of rows and sometimes even placement of darks and lights within a quilt block. It will have a different name. If we look at 2376 right here, we see all of these names: economy patch, hourglass, thrift block, this and that. Different names that this quilt block was called and where those names are attributed. 2377, 12 triangles, shadow boxes. 2378, scrap, square on square. 2379A, mosaic rows. So you can see all of the different names right here for the blocks that are what we would know as economy blocks or square and a square. And maybe as you're watching this video, you might be calling them, you know, one of these other block names, because depending on where you grew up, when you grew up, you're going to know quilt blocks by different names. So that's a little peek into naming quilt blocks. If you are ever on the search for quilt block names, this is a wonderful resource. So I will make sure to have it linked in the description box below if you want to pick one up for yourself. It is just a wealth of information, all kinds of quilt blocks. And it's really fun to look through. But as I said, no instructions, just images and then names. So I thought that was a great question. I'm happy to answer that one. If you have questions you'd like answered in an upcoming video, be sure to let me know. We're going to move now on to some viewer comments of the video. I had a couple from last week's video that I wanted to share. The first one comes in from Aviva Hadass. And this was in reference to when I was talking about spinning seams. And I really like that she left this because I'll read it and then explain. She says, if you are a seam spinner, it helps to always sew top up, bottom down, so that all of your seams spin clockwise. If you are more random, sometimes choosing bottom up, top down, then you will also have counterclockwise spins. No big deal in some blocks and quilts, very big deal in others. I thought this was just great advice coming in from her. In our block last week, because of the way the seams nested to the patches around where we spun those seams, it didn't matter which direction they spun. But it is always wise to know that whenever you are changing pressing instructions within a pattern, that it can affect more than just that individual patch. And so just something to think about. Maybe you are switching from pressing open to pressing to one side. The pattern might be written for pressing open and you prefer to press to one side. Just be aware that anytime you're changing pressing instructions, it can and it probably will affect things throughout the quilt, and you might need to make adjustments as you go. So I really appreciated that. I think that was great. And then just also her tip about paying attention whether your seam is facing towards your sewing machine needle when you're sewing, or away from your sewing machine needle when you're sewing. That does affect the direction that those seams will spin on the back of that block. If you missed last week's video and you want to go ahead and look at that so you can visually see what I'm talking about, that might be helpful. The next comment came to me from Diane.21, and this was in reference to talking about pieced backings last week. We had that great comment about doing a super scrappy potato chip type of pieced backing, and she had another suggestion for a pieced back. Another fun video. I enjoy a pieced back. I have often used panels on the back and then attached borders to achieve the correct size. This makes it reversible, 2 for the price of 1. I thought that was another great suggestion. Sometimes we like those big panels, or even panels that you might be thinking about cutting apart, but you're not quite sure how you want to use them to piece into the front of the quilt, or how to use them in general. And using them on the back of a quilt is a great suggestion, because then you still get a beautiful backing without a lot of extra work. You know, I don't enjoy piecing backings, but that would be a quick way to get a beautiful backing. And then the last comments from last week's video that I wanted to chat about was all of you that mentioned glue basting. It was during that segment where the viewer had asked how to get your seams from slightly moving apart when you were sewing blocks together in rows. Sometimes no matter how much we pin, even making adjustments to our sewing machine or to how we're sewing, we still might have a little trouble getting those seams to nest perfectly how we want them to. And so many of you chimed in with glue basting. And I do not know why I didn't think to mention that. That is such a perfect way to get those seams to stay put. And I even have a glue tip that I bought and purchased and use for when I am glue basting. So I was so glad to see so many of you mentioning that, because if you aren't familiar with glue basting, in place of using pins for keeping those seams butted up, this is such a nice option. So there are lots of different glue basting products. My favorite one is to use just good old-fashioned Elmer's washable school glue. It's inexpensive. There's a lot of it in a bottle, and there are these wonderful tips. This one is by Pen and Paper Patterns. It's called Fine Line. I'll link to it below. And it attaches just to your Elmer's bottle of glue. And it has this wonderful finer tip than what you would typically have on your regular lid. So it allows you to be more precise, use less glue, and get the glue exactly where you want it. So I thought I was so glad to see you guys commenting on that, because glue basting is such a wonderful, well, if I can get my lid back in. It has this little little metal thing so that you don't get that little dried clump up there at the tip, but my aging eyes, there it goes. My aging eyes sometimes give me a little trouble getting that back in there. But this is a great product. I'll link to it below. And yes, thank you so much to all of you who mentioned glue basting. I don't know how many comments I saw come in last weekend, and I thought, can't believe I didn't mention the glue basting, because yes, that's perfect. For those of you unfamiliar with glue basting, there would be tutorials that you could find on how to do it, but really you're just putting a little dab of glue right where you need it to hold your seams in place. Hit it with a hot iron and it will secure that in place. It dries the glue, secures it in place, and then the first time you wash your quilt, all of that washes out. You want to make sure and use the washable school glue, not the all-purpose Elmer's school glue. Big difference in the two, and the washable is what you're after. So that is a tip about glue basting. And now we're going to move into another little segment that I'm going to be maybe introducing every now and again, but I'm calling it Coriander Fun Finds. So I'm going to be sharing things that maybe I've stumbled across, or something that I think a quilter might be interested in hearing or knowing more about. So I'm going to start off with this artist that I have been following on Instagram for a number of years. She is a Welsh artist, and her name is I'm going to butcher it. I'm so bad with butchering these names, but Valeriane LeBlond is how I'm going to pronounce it. I have no idea if that is correct or not, but she makes these whimsical quilt based, oftentimes they have quilts in them, and I just think it's so interesting, and I have followed her for years. I've never purchased anything, but she releases these calendars every year, and I've missed out on them all other years. I don't know that there's going to be any more calendars in her Etsy shop, but she would have prints for sale, so I'll link you to it so you can keep an eye on her. But there's such neat artwork that she designs, and oftentimes there's a little cat tucked in, I've noticed, to her pieces. So we have the quilts and the cats, and see another little kitty there. And I just think it's really pretty. So I'll take you through this whole calendar here so you can get a peek. I didn't know that the calendar was going to be in another language, so everything is different than English, which is fun, and I think that's so neat. But just really pretty. This is my favorite one in the whole calendar. This one right here. I think it's beautiful. I love I don't know if it's a sunrise or a sunset. To me, it feels sunset, but could be sunrise. I just think it's such a welcoming, warm image. A lot of water and quilts and cats and other cute wildlife in there. And the snow, flying birds. I think that's the last one. So that is something that I wanted to share with you. I think those are so pretty. The next thing is this free quilt pattern. Stumbled onto my Instagram just over the weekend, and actually it was this snowflake block right down here that I first saw, and then I went hunting for what is this quilt pattern, because I thought this snowflake block was so pretty. I have a bigger picture I'm going to show you here in just a minute. So what I found out is this is a free quilt pattern. All of the blocks are available now. To get the free pattern, you would be agreeing to sign up for 9 different quilt patterns newsletters, and then you get all of those patterns. So I did that so that I could get the patterns. I thought they were so pretty. I will link below if you want to also snag these quilt block patterns. And then actually finishing instructions, I believe, would be listed in there as well. I didn't go look and see about the finishing instructions. I was just looking for the quilt patterns. But here is the snowflake one. To me, this would be beautiful in holiday winter colors, but it's super pretty in the fall palette as well. And these are big 20-inch blocks, so you could even take just one quilt block and make a really fun pillow. But I printed out some of my favorites so that you could see them a little bigger. So I really liked this snowflake one. I thought this little acorn block was so cute, just a perfect fall pattern. And then this little tree one. I thought that was adorable. You can see it up here. The little tree one. And don't you just love that I printed this one out on my shipping labels? I had shipping labels in my printer and that's what I printed on. So that's why it has this quirky little line there. But the little tree block I thought was so pretty. And then of course you have this other, like a little sunflower block, sunset kind of block. This was adorable. These little mugs here. All in all, a super cute quilt. And I thought some of you might be interested in having that information too. So I'll be sure and have that linked along with the calendar that I shared so that if you want more information about either of those things, you have it. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is Elans finished quilt. You'll remember that a few weeks ago, she decided that she wanted to, I think it was September, August. It was in August. She decided that on a whim, she wanted to make a quilt. We went out, purchased all the fabrics. She was after homespuns. I shared some videos on working with homespuns. She pieced her quilt. We sent it out to David to quilt and we got it back. Actually, it's been a few weeks since she's had it. She's been merrily sleeping with it, I think, every night. She loves it. She loves the way it turned out. And I knew I had promised that I would share it here with all of you. I couldn't get her on the video, maybe sometime, but I'd be surprised. But I do have her quilt here for you all to see. So you probably can't see the quilting that well from back there, but we'll do a close-up of it here in just a minute. We used bamboo batting, so it's real lightweight and very drapey. The backing, it is a 108-inch flannel from a Lisa Bond jean line. And then the front is just that mix of all of those homespun fabrics that she picked out. There's a lot of blues, a little bit of greens, a lot of dark shades. All right, let me move some of these things out of the way. We'll lay this down so I can show you that quilting a little bit closer. She picked a quilting design called Contempo, which is a maze sort of design, and you can see it really nicely on this right here. So the quilting thread color is a warmish grayish blue, kind of a steel blue sort of shade, and it for the most part blends. I do tend to prefer threads that blend across the quilt rather than contrast across. So I think this blends really nicely, but then you do get kind of that pop on some of the squares where it really shows up. For that backing flannel, here you can see it here, just a dark plaid sort of flannel, and then the binding is the same as the backing. We just used the cutoffs from the backing to use for the binding. And that is her quilt. One thing I do want to mention, so we washed all of the homespuns initially. They tend to shrink up pretty good. They tend to be, you know, kind of ravelly. And so we washed all of those, but we did not pre-wash the backing. So this gives you an idea of how that worked out. Worked out great. I always get asked, you know, questions about pre-washing, washing in general, what to pre-wash, what not to pre-wash. And so that's what I did for this one. And it washed up really nicely. Shout color catchers were a must for this backing fabric. And they picked up quite a bit of dye on that first wash. We've washed it once so far. I'll use those shout color catchers again on the next several washes. And I anticipate that it's still going to pick up some dyes as we go. I'll probably throw in 2 or so. And it really did wash up nicely. So Elans quilt is complete. Now, I mentioned that I have a special guest. Some of you may have known that it was going to be Nicole. She is going to come in. She's going to be sharing more about her calliope. It is not done like Elans, but we are moving along in the right direction to get that finished soon. So let me go grab her. All right, my special guest, my sister Nicole, is back with us today.
Hello.
And we are talking about her Calliope quilt. So some of you have seen this, probably a lot of you have seen this, but I know there are new viewers to our videos and you may not have seen this. So this is Calliope, Nicole's very first quilt that she has ever made. And we're going through the process of now deciding the backing, the quilting, and those sorts of things. And we're just going to chat about that. We need your opinion. Because
yes, I'm not quite sure which route to go.
Yeah.
So
Nicole has picked some different quilting patterns and she doesn't know.
Yeah.
I have a favorite. She has a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not the same.
No.
And so that doesn't matter. Nicole's going to pick what she wants, but we're curious what you all think.
Yeah, I picked out 3 that I really like. I feel like I could go in any direction. Who knows? Maybe, I feel like, let me look at them again here.
Okay, why don't we lay those out so that
Mm-hmm.
as you're talking about them,
yes,
they can see what we are looking at.
So those are the 3 I picked out. Okay, yes, I do remember which one is my favorite, but it's pretty tight between the 3. I like them all. So I'm not going to tell you which one I like because I don't want to influence anyone's decision. But once everyone votes, then I'll tell you which one I like. Corey will tell you which one she likes. And we'll see if you guys like the same one that we like or the third option.
They might like the third one. I don't know. So all of these are So Shabby Quilting quilt designs. She's been having some really beautiful ones that I've been very drawn to. So I sent Nicole to her website specifically to see what she could find. Sometimes I think when you are just starting to look for quilt patterns, it's so easy to be overwhelmed with the many different quilting designs we have available to us. So I was hoping that by narrowing things down a little bit, but still like a great variety of quilting designs, that it would be a good jumping off point. Yeah. So this is where she landed. I think when you were looking, you said you were looking for whimsical, holiday, novelty sort of designs.
Yes, it really helped narrow it down because I knew I wanted something kind of wintry, holiday, not necessarily like a swirly or geometric. I wanted something specifically, since it's kind of, you know, Christmassy quilt, to kind of have a fun little design to go with it. So that helped narrow it down too.
And I think we were looking for something that could also be quilted out pretty big and still look nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nicole is going with this fireside. She had talked about using a black in the last video.
I did, yeah.
You had been thinking maybe black, and you've decided instead to do, we're going to come back to these in just a minute, so you have voting names, but let's open this up. This is Moda's Fireside. It's a 60-inch. When you're making a Calliope quilt, you need 2 yards of a 60-inch, so this works great. What color is this? Color 11. So it's Moda Fireside in color 11, and it's a really soft, minky, pretty lightweight fabric, and it works really nicely on the back of quilts. Calliope is a free pattern, so I'll make sure and link to that. But that's what you're thinking, backing.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Have you decided on your binding?
I think I'm going to do some kind of stripe. Maybe a black stripe, black and white stripe, maybe a polka dot. No, I haven't decided.
No, we're still working on that. But we'll get that figured out. Yeah. You'll get that figured out. Maybe I'm leaving all the decisions up to Nicole, what she wants to do. Maybe just suggesting, but whatever she wants is fine. Okay, let's roll this back up. Lay these back out. You can just set that to the side. We'll give you guys the names of these and then vote for your favorite. We have Starry Pine Tree, a whimsical tree and swirl squiggle design. My descriptions are very professional. Star Vines, Stars and Vines as the name implies. That's pretty. And then Loopy Snowflakes. Loops and snowflakes, and all of them kind of have a similar vibe, but they're all a little different. So trees, stars, or snowflakes. And vote and let us know.
Yeah, I'll be excited to hear what everyone thinks.
I know, it'll be interesting.
I have no idea which way people will
I don't know either. I don't know.
I feel like they're pretty similar. So my gut tells me that it's going to be close. Like it's not going to be like a pull ahead
overwhelming.
Yeah.
When you guys voted on the wide border color, red or pink, overwhelmingly red.
Yes.
Not nearly as many pinks.
No.
So you're thinking it's going to be very similar.
I think so. I don't know. We'll see.
See what happens. Okay, vote. Let us know.
Yep, vote below.
Let us know what you think. Okay. Next, I want to show you guys something fun. So we have put together a few more bundles. I very seldom sell bundles in my Etsy shop, mostly only quilt patterns. But I have a stash that we put together a few bundles of fabric for. They could be used for a calliope quilt, or they're just fat quarter bundles as well. So we've got very limited, actually only 4 of this one. We're going to lay these out. So 4 of these are over in the Etsy shop right now. I don't anticipate them to stay very long because there's only 4. And then for this bundle, I started off, Nicole, pairing together fabrics based on using some really old stash fabric I had. Do any of you remember Summer in the City? I mean, this is years ago, mid-2000s, I don't know.
Wow.
It's been a while. And I have just never used these fabrics. So I said, hey, I think these could be a good jumping off point for a calliope bundle. And then when we're talking about your calliope bundle, calliope quilt, we could show some fun options. So these were the 4 we started with. And then actually I had, these 2 are old Amy Butler fabrics, this polka dot and this polka dot. So once we had all of these, we only needed a few more prints to tie everything together to make a pretty bundle. So Nicole started by choosing, and then we kind of pared things down a little bit together, and we came up with this fun mix, which I think would make a really pretty calliope quilt. And so we've got 4 of these, and then we put together, I said, well, let's do a whole flower-filled rainbow. So we put together another bundle using just flowers in a whole rainbow. So this one is a mix. So we've got the Summer in the City fabric, some Amy Butler, and then the rest of the fabrics are from some of my lines. This next one is all Coriander Quilts fabrics, and it's just very flowery. Okay, we'll lay these out. So again, you've got the 4 whites for your center strip here, what you see right here. And then you've got all the darks to contrast. Nicole, if you had to pick one of these 2 bundles, which one do you like better?
You know, I did the first one that you were talking about first, and I loved it. I thought it was so fun, so colorful, so bright, but then we did this one. And then I'm like, oh, but that's just so lovely. So I think that this one is actually my favorite between the 2.
Yeah. As I was looking at them today, I was like, oh, this retro bundle over here is so fun. I had kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, it is so fun.
Happy and summery. They have a similar feel. This is definitely more throwback, a little 70s maybe. Oh, yeah. Let me get these on camera. 70s maybe with some of those prints in there.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
So fun.
So this bundle, we only have 6. This one, we only have 4. Like I said, I very seldom have fabric bundles in my shop. So this is one time I've got just a couple. If you see it, you should snag it sooner rather than later. I don't expect them to stick in there very long. And we don't have enough to redo exacts. So
once they're gone, they're gone.
This is true.
Yep.
All right. Now, the last thing I wanted to, well, if any of you guys have any other questions for Nicole that you'd like her to come back and answer in a video, leave those for us here, maybe quilt related. I know some of you left questions the last time she was here, so we just keep adding questions to our ongoing list and then try to cover things as we can each Saturday. So if you have questions, let us know. But then the last thing I wanted to chat about was the winners of my layer cakes that I offered on giveaway just a couple weeks ago, but I forgot to write those names down. So I'm gonna go grab those names and I'll be right back. I went up to grab those video names and a visitor has followed me. I'm trying to see if I can get another surprise visitor to come visit us. He's hiding around. Hold on, I've got my little... Oh, he's batting here. Come on, buddy. So many of you have been asking to see TIGGS again, and he's usually not around. He's always outside, and so he's not usually around. He's going to mess my mic up if I get him too close there. But here he is. In fact, on Saturday's video, I had a question come in. I think Rita Herzberger, if I'm remembering right, was someone who said, hey, how's TIGGS doing? I haven't seen him for a while. Well, he is just fine. He's living his best TIGGS life. He loves being outside. this time of year. And so he's not usually here. He's such a big purr cat. Oh my goodness. Here he is. So yes, he's doing good. Doing good. We love him. But yeah, if you ever want to see TIGGSy, just give a holler and I'll see if I can get him in. If you want to see Frances, you're probably never going to see her in a video, but all right, so he's going to lounge while I let you know. Oh, sorry, buddy. While I let you know those giveaway winners. This is from a couple weeks ago. I had the layer cake giveaway sponsored by Moda, and we had 3 different layer cakes to give away. The winners have all been notified, but I wanted to share those names here. Marcy H was the winner of the Pumpkin Spice Gatherings layer cake. Nina G was the Perfect Christmas layer cake winner, and Melissa K was the Buon Natal layer cake winner. So thank you so much for all of you who entered that giveaway. That was fun to be able to do that. And thank you to Moda for sending us those layer cakes so that we could share those with all of you. I think that is all I have for this video. Thank you so much for stopping by and have a wonderful Saturday.